Hello, this is Senator Ryan Fazio. I've heard from hundreds, if not thousands, of constituents outrage at Connecticut's sky-high electric rates, and they're right. Connecticut has the third highest electric rates in the entire country, which is unacceptable. The good news is, this week, finally, we can do something about it. A bill that I co-authored, Senate Bill 647, will be up for a public hearing before the state's Energy and Technology Committee. Anyone across Connecticut has the opportunity to testify over Zoom, in person, or submit written testimony, anywhere from a few words to 3 minutes long, in favor of policies to bring down our sky-high electric rates. The 6-point plan in the bill starts with a plan to eliminate public benefits charges. Those are a hidden tax that fund over 40 different government programs passed in a discretionary manner by the state legislature. It's a regressive and unfair tax on Connecticut electric customers, and it needs to end. That, in addition to 5 other proposals, could bring down electric bills by $400 or $500 for the average resident in the state. Look to the link in my bio or below to sign up to testify or to submit written testimony. The public hearing is this Thursday, March 6th, starting at 10:30 a.m. and will likely go late to the night on that day. People across our state are calling for change. They're calling for leadership to lower our electric bills and make our state affordable for everybody. Senate Bill 647 before the Energy and Technology Committee this Thursday, March 6th, is a good way to start.
And the eyes on. There we go. All right. That was Ryan Fazio, everyone. And this is welcome to a special episode of Mike Sennello Show where Senator Fazio has joined us. So thanks for coming on, Senator Fazio.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
So first things first, tonight we're going to be having a single topic discussion on Senate Bill 647. And this is kind of a hill I've been dying on for some time now. But in very brief, it has gotten to a point at least where there is a public hearing scheduled for the Energy and Technology Committee for Senate Bill 647. The agenda is online now. You can see that there are 5 other bills, 3 that were raised through the committee process itself and not through the standard proposal process, which we can talk about on another podcast. We don't really need to get into that detail. But there's our Senate Bill 647. You can actually get a lot of the information just from this agenda, which you can just Google. I'll put the link in the comments for folks who want to see it. You can register to speak up top, and you can submit written testimony via links that are in this page as well. We talked about how in this channel there was the proposed bill, now that it has a public hearing, has a committee bill. And what does that mean? That means that the original proposed bill, which is 4 or 5 sentences long, and itemized broadly these 6 points, the 6-point plan to reduce electric bills, to the customers here in Connecticut, and finally get those public benefits charges off your bills. That's item number 1. Now, what does that look like now that we have a public hearing? It's a 30-page committee bill, which we went over on Sunday night's show. For those who have been following, thanks for tuning in. It's on that show. Just very briefly, so folks who haven't been tuning in, haven't been following that much, I put together this scorecard of every single bill that's before the Energy and Technology Committee, and I gave it a score based on quality, like what I actually think of the bill, and then the likelihood of it actually passing. So just very briefly, if the idea is that it's a 10 out of 10 going to pass, there's really not any point in getting too much effort behind it. If it's a 0 out of 10 of passing, then there's also not much point of getting behind it. So as you guys can all see, this bill and its House equivalent are basically at the top of the list here, highlighted in bold. This is the one I've been talking about now for months. So where we have gotten to in this process is testimony. So this page on Sunday night, when I did the Sunday night show, had 6 pieces of testimony submitted, written testimony submitted to the committee. Last night, we talked about how it was up to just over 280, and now we are over 500. So I am going to go out and say I am in favor of this bill, and I've been saying that for some time now. Good job, everyone. We got to keep this going. I want this to be thousands. I want to go to the scroll bar here and just be scrolling endlessly. Just be
Wow.
completely bombarded. Yeah. So Senator Fazio, I don't know if you've seen this, but that's something else. And as far
That
as
makes me happy.
yeah, as far as I can tell, it's all in favor of it, or very nearly all in favor of it. So I just wanted to give folks, because we're going to get somewhat esoteric, not really, but somewhat esoteric when it comes to this bill, this particular bill. So I just wanted to give everybody a quick rundown of, where we are on all of this. So with the written testimony, so with all of that said, now that we're seeing some of this feedback, Senator Fazio, what has been your feeling about how residents feel in particular about this bill?
I think that they're overwhelmingly in favor of it. Most importantly, they understand that electric rates are too high in this state, that they're far too high. Second, they understand that the state government and state policies bear responsibility for it being too high. And third, they want something done to directly reverse and improve those state policies that are making it too expensive. And the very first among those that comes to mind for people is the public benefits fees. All these programs, which are funded through what is essentially a hidden tax in your electric bill in the form of public benefits charges, they want to eliminate that tax. I think that is very reasonable. And to the extent that some of those programs should exist, they should go through the biennial budget process to evaluate them and find efficiencies in those programs like any other government program. And it should go within the budget appropriations process, which limits how much you can tax and spend year to year. This is an off-budget related to energy and environment and other social programs that is never re-examined. It only gets bigger. It doesn't have any logical controls. It doesn't have to be approved every 2 years. It doesn't have to go through public hearings and vetting in that time. And so that's why I think people are instinctually, even if they may not live and die by energy policy as you do or as I do, they instinctually recognize that that's unfair. Yeah. And that's a bad standard operating procedure. And that's how waste and bloat happens. That's exactly what you're paying for in your electric bill. So I think that the public support for this is actually quite overwhelming. For a major complicated public debate, I think that people pretty much get this. And in my district, where I've been talking about it for 2 years, because this bill is really a version of a plan that I first introduced 2 years ago in January of 2023. So this is not something new. It's something I've been talking about over and over again for the last 2 years. And people for the entirety of that period have understood that electric rates are too high in this state and we have to do something about it. So I think that the public support for this is very, very broad and quite deep, actually. There was also, I'll finish, there was a recent poll by, I think, the CBIA. It was a scientific poll of Connecticut voters on some state issues. And it found that the number one most important issue to voters in the state was electric costs. And 73% of voters supported taking public benefits fees out of the electric bill.
Yeah.
An overwhelming majority. It's difficult to find 73% of people who agree on anything. So my sense is that, yes, this is a complicated issue, but people have been paying attention and they are on our side.
Yeah, that's probably especially true of the folks who follow along in this channel, as we've kind of, like I said, taken esoteric deep dives into these bills. And on that note, for those of you that are coming here from the Facebook page or from my Discord server for the banning of public benefits charges, guys, this is your access to your representative, to your elected officials. So I'm hoping to have some live Q&A at the end of our conversation, 5, 10, 15 minutes, see how the audience goes. So folks at home, if you're seeing this, this is your chance. This is your chance to get access to your elected officials. So share this video with everyone. So at home, yeah, I know I'm doing my own little shill, but this is what you want to see. Share it now while we're live so we can get those questions in and ask ranking member, Senator Fazio, whatever questions need to be asked. Even if they're really tough questions, we'll try to get them through. So as far as the feedback that you've gotten, it's been overwhelmingly positive, but I'm sure you've seen some of the pushback. It's been made relatively public. What have you been hearing as it relates to the pushback, and that's especially in regards to the kind of infamous Hartford Current article from February of last year.
Sorry, which was that Hartford Current article from February last year?
That it was basically saying that virtually all of the increase from year to year, from the previous cycle to this current cycle, is the short making up the shortfall on the Millstone deal.
Okay.
And that was a Republican-led bill in the first place.
Yeah. All right. So I'll try to explain and then rebut the two pieces of criticism of my arguments or some of my allies' arguments and maybe some of our proposals. I'll try to give them a fair kind of summary of their arguments and then also rebut them because they're not here to make them themselves. So first of all, one of their arguments is that yes, public benefits are high right now, but 77% of the increase from this period compared to the last period, and the procurement, the energy procurement periods are roughly 6 months. So the breakdown in different parts of your bill is about the same for 6 months, because of the way billing and the adjustments go. But they'd say 77% of the increase in public benefits is due to an increase in the credit on the Millstone deal. And so what they mean by that is in the supply portion of your bill, that's where we buy most of our energy from power plants. That's where we buy energy on the wholesale market. But there's also cases where the state government requires the long-term fixed price purchase with legislative approval of energy at normally always really almost always above the market rate, and the amount of that contract up to the market price is accounted for in supply, and then the subsidy will say the amount that's above the market for a certain period goes into public benefits. So of all the the power purchase agreements, those subsidized fixed price contracts that the state government approves, the lowest price one is the Millstone nuclear deal. It's about 5 cents per kilowatt hour over 10 years. And the market rate, the competitive market rate for electricity kind of oscillates between, let's say, 2.5 and 6 cents. Really it's around 4 cents over the last several years on average, but it's volatile. So, and listen, it's a supply, the amount you're paying to power plants is a minority of everything you're paying for it, right? It's about 20% of your electric bill. Transmission, distribution, and public benefits are probably like 70+%. So that's a higher portion. And that's why you pay like 25, 30 cents all in. But anyway, so over the last few years, sometimes Millstone at 5 cents per kilowatt hour is below the market rate for electricity, in which case your public benefit goes negative to Millstone. So you're actually getting money back from the Millstone deal. In the last period, the supply market went down below 5 cents. So the Millstone, the cost of Millstone went up in the public benefits because we're
offsetting the difference.
Yes, because they're accounting for the difference. But what also happened in the last pay period is the overall cost of electricity, all in, went up, even though the market rate for electricity, the competitive market rate for electricity went down. Now, Millstone in the last pay period, in this pay period, in the next pay period, is 5 cents the whole time. So basically, accounting for the Millstone contract goes basically being accounted for in the supply part of the bill to being accounted for more in the public benefits part of the bill. So I think that the 77% thing, 77% of the increase, right? Not of the whole thing, of the increase, yes, is due to Millstone because it goes from a credit to a debit in the public benefits part of the bill. But if you zoom out, and I only fleet data for the full year 2023, I don't have it for 2024, about $500 million of public benefits in the Eversource system. So that doesn't include the United Illuminating utility part of Connecticut. But for the system covering most of Connecticut, Eversource, about $500 million in public benefits had nothing to do with Millstone, and about 50 to 100 million was related to Millstone. So you're still looking at, over a long period of time, 80% of the public benefits, give or take 10% there, has nothing to do with the Millstone contract. There's over 40 other programs that are passed by the state government, passed by the state legislature, that have nothing to do with Millstone, that are constituting most of your public benefits charges over a long period of time. And again, the $500 million in the Eversource system that had nothing to do with Millstone, that divides out to roughly $400 for the average customer in Connecticut. So it's a lot of money. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the bill 647 is the first item on the bill, both in its proposed form and in the 30-page form. I noticed that you kind of ordered it. You were one of the co-authors to this bill, to the committee form version of the bill. So I'm going to put some of this on you in terms of the order of the writing. Was the first item in the proposed bill, which is to move these public benefits charges off of your electric bills, which is what people want. But the pushback that I'm seeing is that instead of it just vanishing off into the ether, which is where I think it should go, it's just being shifted effectively to the taxpayers by moving to the House floor. What's your response to this pushback?
Yes, and that is a logical response. And so my response to that is a couple-fold. First of all, it would be better to exist within the budget than the electric bill, because if it's in the electric bill, it stays there into perpetuity. And so you get to a situation like we have today, where these programs have just been added one on top of the other, to the point that we're all paying $500 per year in public benefits, and no one has, over a period of time, reevaluated it. It didn't have to be renewed by the state legislature by a vote, whereas everything in the budget has to go through a public hearing. It has to be proposed every 2 years, go through a public hearing every 2 years, and compete against all other requirements for revenue in a state budget. So it actually goes through a normal kind of budgetary process and public vetting process. And so by that alone, you would see those programs, those 40 different programs, cut down to size, evaluated for efficiencies, and yes, improved. A lot of them could probably be improved, and some of them might have justification, and they just sit there forever into perpetuity. And why would they ever improve themselves? There's no incentive to do so.
So you're saying in that part of what you're just saying, that there's a level of inertia that could kill these bills just by virtue of if there's political inertia, then they just disappear into the ether because nobody's getting behind them actively.
Yes. So let me make two other points, and the third one will relate closely to that point. So first is that they are kind of just automatic, taxed against the Connecticut residents forever as is. They should be reevaluated every 2 years through a normal budget process. The second point is that there is a spending cap in our state budget. So government spending in the state of Connecticut since 2017, and this is the most important and positive thing we've done in the state of Connecticut in the last, God knows how many years, 20 years. You cannot raise government spending in the state budget by the greater of household spending growth or inflation, which makes sense because you shouldn't be implicitly raising taxes, because spending is taxes, by more than people's incomes are growing. And that's a great innovation that was done in bipartisan. It was a Republican proposal, but it was supported at the time in a 50-50 state Senate in 2017. Now, if you put all these programs into the state budget, that spending cap still exists. So in order for these programs to get funded, either they'll need to be cut down or something else will need to be cut down in order to come underneath the spending cap. So it will not increase the aggregate tax burden on Connecticut residents. It will not increase the aggregate spending in the state budget because the budget cap still exists. It will force the legislators to prioritize, right? $26 billion, 500 million of it, or 600 million of it is public benefits. They'll have to find $600 million of room. I'm sorry, that's what people do and people should do. So that'll mean that some of this will be cut, some of the public benefits programs will be cut down, or some other things will be cut down. The least important of the $26.6 billion in requests will be cut down. And that was the error in Governor Lamont's criticism of our proposal in his budget address analytically, that he said, oh, it's just shifting costs from the ratepayers to the taxpayers. No, it's not, because we have a spending cap. So it'll force people to prioritize. Third, and finally, and to your original point, is because there is not going to be as much support for these programs in an actual legislative process in comparison to the other government programs and the other needs we have in the state. The aggregate of those public benefits programs in a state budget process will be cut down. And yes, several of them that are most important and justifiable will continue. But I think most of them will be significantly reduced in size. And therefore, the money that actually is spent on them will be more efficiently spent because there will be a carefulness. But the aggregate of the $600 billion of whatever, some of it's okay, some of it's not okay, some of it just needs to be improved and efficiencies found, that will go down significantly. So that's my three-part rebuttal to those arguments that are being made, which are logical arguments. I'm happy to hear them because I actually think that there's an answer to all of them.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's, of course, just the argument on principle, which is, kind of what you've been saying throughout these 3 points, which is that this is what returns consent of the governed. Because when they're buried in your electric bill, the ability for the voter, for the citizen of Connecticut to have any influence on that is virtually nothing. And when we get it before the actual legislature, that's where it just on principle belongs. And it's kind of disgusting that you're passing it on, that we would otherwise be passing it on to the ratepayer. So with that said, since that's the biggest item on the bill is that thing, and there's 6 other points, we've beaten it to like a dead horse on this channel. So just a broad, do you feel like the committee bill, now that we've gone to that committee bill, reflects the intentions of the proposed bill, which is probably what more people have spent time and energy actually reading since it's only 4 sentences long?
Yes, it does. I mean, the process is, and to the credit of my Democratic colleagues on the committee, that they don't agree with most of what we're proposing, but they realize that there's a lot of popular support for our proposal and that we're serious about our proposal. So, I co-authored the proposed bill, and they allowed us to write, me and Tracy Mara essentially, to write the committee bill, the fully kind of fledged bill. So yes, it reflects our original intention. And like any first draft, there's going to be things pointed out to me in the public hearing on Thursday that I'm like, wow, that's a good point. We should improve upon. But this is the first real draft, and it reflects what the intention of the original proposed bill was.
Okay, so if we're going to have potentially more drafts and potential revisions, which I'm familiar with, that's how the committee process works. Is there anything in the committee version of the bill that you wish you could have or would have included, but it's just not there?
I think, listen, if we were in the majority and we're going to spend all of our time going through this, what we would do is we would line item by line item in the public benefits go through how to deal with every single one, moving them eventually all off the electric bill, yes, but figuring out which ones just to say, we're going to end this, we're going to let this expire, we're going to fully fund this in the budget, we're going to partially fund this in the budget, this is going to go away, this contract is still ongoing and we can't end the contract, so should that be here or should that be there, and so on and so forth. If we had all the time in the world and we were in the majority, meaning that we knew it was had a high likelihood of passing, we would have probably gone through every single line item and figured out how to deal with them exactly individually. So I guess that is the one thing that if I had time and wherewithal, we'd probably be extraordinarily exact in every single line item. Instead, we said this should be funded. This should go through the budgetary process.
Okay, so you're kind of speaking to the pragmatism I talked about when I showed the scorecard that I had, that like there are bills where they're awesome. For example, my favorite bill that's before you is I forget his name, that they proposed a complete repeal of the renewable portfolio standard, which I'm in favor of, but I mean, come on, it's not going to pass.
Yeah, and there's ways to make it less onerous, including as we proposed in our bill.
Yeah. Okay. So as far as the bill itself is concerned, when I said, is there things in the bill that not in the bill that you wish you could have added? I don't know, say something like having to do with the RECs and the RECs mandates, that because we've talked about on the show that, like, on principle, the public benefits charges shouldn't be on your bill. And that's why it's not item number one. Just on pure principle, it shouldn't be there. But as far as the huge part of the reason that the electric rates in Connecticut are what they are, I'm sure you saw the Lending Tree report that had Connecticut as the highest average electric bill in all of America, and the second highest rates in all of America, in the continental 48, behind only California. And so just real quick, I want you to know that, like, I actually did review that article, and Connecticut was behind only Mississippi. This is a point that people may have missed. Connecticut was behind only Mississippi in terms of people who were struggling, the percentage of people who were struggling to pay their bills. And then on top of that, for those that at home that are saying, oh, it's a matter of geography and climate, we're in New England, that article had us pegged at 29.93 cents a kilowatt hour on average. New Hampshire was under 23 cents a kilowatt hour. And we talked about it on the show that our rates are over 30% higher than our fellow New England state, New Hampshire, who is famously way more cold than we are and way, way more sparsely populated. So that would suggest that in a proper environment that their rates would actually be higher than ours, not significantly lower. So it says to me that the difference in these rates is just purely a matter of policy. And from what I've been seeing, and I've talked to retailers, electrical retailers like Trevor Herbest here in New Milford, and what he's saying is that what's the biggest expense in terms of a policy standpoint are the RECs mandates. So is that something that you wish was part of? It probably wasn't even something you could work into the 6-point plan. As far as underneath the umbrella of what was there, it would have to be added on. Is that something that you wish you could have seen in a bill like this?
It is in the bill, and here is how it's in the bill. The REC mandate, the renewable portfolio standard mandate, for your listeners who at this point I'm sure are the vast majority of them are aware, is a requirement that a certain percentage of all energy produced be done from certain renewable or clean sources, and that in order to signify that you're doing that, you have to purchase a renewable energy credit called a REC in order to prove that you're doing so. And those RECs have a price in the market, in a traded market, from anywhere from 0 to, I think that the cap is 5.5 cents. So say it's 4 or 5 cents, and that's a significant cost. I think if you look at the line items in the public benefits charges, it's $50 to $100 million. So it's not most of the $500 million, but it's a very significant portion. I think it's in a couple different sections.
No, I'm talking about, like, affecting things like delivery costs, right? Because in the supply line. So outside of the public benefits, the rest of the bill is still way higher than every other state in New England. So yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So just to clarify, the RECs that you have to purchase in order to fund the renewable portfolio standard, satisfy the renewable portfolio standard, that cost obviously passed on to consumers. You're talking about the fact that is in.
It's baked into the cost of. So when wholesalers are selling the electricity to the EDCs, the EDCs of course have to just pass on that cost. Yeah. They're not in the business of losing money.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that these RECs requirements are for electrical generation that's just way, way more expensive than other versions of that. And there are certain limitations on how and where you can buy those RECs. We talked about this on the show. And things like purchasing through the Green Bank, there's just way more expensive than just purchasing for the wholesaler on just the market. Like if Trevor Herbest again brought up the example of he can buy certain RECs in Texas for a 20th of the price of what he has to buy it for based on the renewable portfolio standard.
Yes, but I believe that the entirety of the recs are the line items are in the cost or in the public benefits.
Okay.
I'm not positive.
That's not how it was explained to me, but that's all right.
I'm confident. Well, I'd actually like to circle up with the person. You know, I can also ask a couple other people because that's actually an important detail. And again, you know, we're dealing with so many different data points in all of this that I could be wrong. There is a line item in the public benefits for the rec program. So at least part of it, my lights just flickered on more brightly. At least part of it is in the public benefits, but it's possible that some of it is passed on otherwise. I can imagine how that is, but I would think it's in the public benefits. But either way, you're right. It's a lot of money, and it's passed totally onto the ratepayers. So we're all paying for this program, this renewable portfolio standard program, and the costs are going to go up, right? Because currently, I think the mandate's roughly 30% of our electricity has to be purchased through these clean sources. 32.
I can clarify. 38% for 2025. It has to be a class 1, class 2, or class 3 renewable. Class 1 renewables have to account for 30.5%.
Yeah.
So,
and that's going up, but under law, you know, it's going up to over 40%. I think 48% all in if you add them all in by like 2040. We can check that out.
Oh yeah, no, it goes up. It goes up every year, and I'm just going based on what it is this year right now. It's 38% of the total portfolio of the electricity that you wind up paying for is coming from these renewable sources that are just orders of magnitude more expensive than what they would be if this standard didn't exist.
Now, here's one of the crazy things about the renewable portfolio standard, and I'll get into where I address it in the bill. It allows wind to satisfy this renewable portfolio mandate. It allows solar. It allows trash to energy. It allows geothermal, which isn't very widespread. It allows biomass, which isn't zero carbon. It does not allow existing nuclear production, and it does not allow most hydropower, both of which are zero carbon. And guess what? They also happen to be cheaper, and they happen to be much more reliable than the other sources of energy I just mentioned. What our bill proposes to do is to include all hydropower and all nuclear in the renewable portfolio standard. And when you add more supply to something, what happens to the price? The price goes down.
Yeah.
So if you add all nuclear, which is actually enough to satisfy the renewable portfolio standard by itself, I think in Connecticut, because there's so much nuclear production. Actually, some of it might go to satisfy the CES in Massachusetts. So maybe it won't be all of it, but it'll be a lot of it. And then plus hydropower, you would see the REC prices, the cost of the ZREC program go down. And so you would see cost to consumers go down. And that when I asked Pura to analyze my proposal to do that just 2 years ago, when the earlier version of this bill that I proposed was up before the committee, they said that it would save Connecticut residents tens and tens and tens of $1 million per year. So that's how we get at reforming the renewable portfolio standard. Just saying, all clean energy gets to be eligible, not just wind and solar, but nuclear and hydro, which are zero carbon. The fact that they're not fully included in there is insane. I was able to get new nuclear in there in the bill, in a bill that I passed 2 years ago. That was a good compromise. But existing nuclear, I wasn't able to get in there. And non-run-of-river hydropower, I wasn't able to get in there. You get those two things in there, you see the cost to consumers go down substantially.
Yeah, and this is kind of the pushback I've seen itemized on your bill, is that this doesn't actually do anything because hydroelectric is already class 1, and it's not. It's only run-of-the-river hydropower facilities, which I don't know if we have even one. The 3 largest hydroelectric generators in all of Connecticut aren't run-of-the-river. So that's the Chippewa Dam, that's the Stevenson Dam, and then that's the hydroelectric facility for Conduit at Rocky River. That accounts for
how big they are in terms of megawatts.
Well, it's over 2/3 of all hydroelectric productivity is in just those 3 plants, and they don't qualify because they're not run of the river. Which again, there's only 11 hydroelectric facilities. It's either 9, 10, or 11 hydroelectric facilities in Connecticut. And I went through I think the first 7 of them, and none of them were even close to run of the river. So Yeah, that's one caveat. I just wanted to make sure that I don't know if you saw me bringing that up in the bill.
Great point.
In brackets, we've gotten rid of the run of the river qualification for hydropower, and then at the end, we did scroll down to the next page, where item 12 is a nuclear power generating facility, and you removed all of the qualifications for it. Now, the pushback I've gotten, just to be quick, so you're aware for the public hearing that's happening on Thursday, is that it's not technically renewable because you're burning a source. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just, poison the well with this and say the people that are making that argument are being purposely and willfully semantically pedantic, right? Because there's also not going to be, tellurium is a rare earth that is absolutely imperative for modern photovoltaic electrical generation, and will be just straight up out of it by 2045. So, and it's not a matter of us having another way to recycle it, because we don't have a way to recycle it at all. We don't have a way to extract it that's just really that's like super expensive. No, we only have one way to extract it, and it's through incredibly expensive processes that have to go with residuals from copper mining. It's not just a rare earth. It's way more rare than gold, and it's about as rare as platinum. So, so if we're going to be semantically pedantic, well, then in that case, solar isn't renewable. So, cleanest, by the way, another thing that I want to bring up so you're aware for the public hearing, if you wanted to take notes on this, according to Joe Biden in 2021's Joe Biden's Energy Department, nuclear is the cleanest, safest, and most reliable source of electricity we currently have. According to a report that we showed on Sunday night from Joe Biden's Department of Energy. So, I'd be happy to give that to you after our conversation here. So we're getting
from Joe Biden's lips to God's ears.
Yep. So when it comes to what's happening on Thursday, so the reason I wanted to bring you on is because of what's happening on Thursday. It's not just Senate Bill 647, which I wanted to talk to you about because you're one of the co-authors, and you're one of the ranking members on the committee that is holding the public hearing. I want to know your thoughts on the significance of the public hearing, not just particularly this one necessarily, but just public hearings in general as it relates to the committee process, and the significance of the committee process as it relates to getting this thing to be an actual bill.
Yes. So going back to step one, for your listeners who mostly know this, but just a refresher, the first step in the legislative process, which this year goes from January through June, is to propose a bill. Then those bills are referred to the different committees where the subject matter is relevant. The committee can choose whether to advance that bill, the first stage, which is to draft it, or to put it to a public hearing where the public can give input. After that, it decides whether to edit it and then pass it out of the committee for approval to the floor of the House and the Senate. Then the House can choose to vote on something and pass it through the House or Senate. In the Senate, the same thing. It would go to the other house. They'd have the chance to decide, and then it would go to the governor. So we're at like the second step of 5 or 6 in the process. But the public hearing process is important, first because we actually do learn things about the bills that are proposed. And we hear from different stakeholders, and we get arguments. And, legislators actually do have their minds altered. Maybe that's not the right phrasing. They have their minds changed about different proposals based on the arguments and the information they hear in a public hearing. And listen, this proposal has been in the ether for 2 years. So a lot of people have strong opinions about it. But the fact that we're going to get hundreds of people testifying in favor of this proposal on Thursday, the vast majority of all testimony in favor of it, I think will send a powerful message to stakeholders in the state that we're tired of these high costs, that we recognize that the state can do something about it, and that we want the state to do something about it. And so I think this is going to be one of the most highly anticipated, if not the most highly anticipated public hearing of this entire year, of this entire 2 years, because people will finally have a chance to speak out in favor of reform and against the status quo as it pertains to energy and utility. And this is the vehicle to do it. So that's why I appreciate, us talking, again, for the specific reason of that public hearing being on Thursday.
So then, as somebody who's in the not just minority, but what would you call the opposite of a supermajority? A super minority?
Super minority.
Yeah. Okay. So I've had Senator Harding on the show several times. I've had Representative Pat Callahan on the show several times. I've had Billy Mo Buckby on the show, and this is kind of a question that always winds up coming up. Like, how do you get things to move forward when you're facing a supermajority opposition party, let's say? And so when it comes to this bill, the fact that it's got a public hearing to me is actually relatively significant that it's gotten at least to that point. I mean, what are your thoughts? Are you surprised at all that this particular bill has made it as far as it has?
I mean, listen, we have this agreement. The different committees and different members of the legislature work in different ways. And state legislatures are less top down than the U.S. Congress is. So the U.S. Congress became much more top down in the 90s and onwards. And now there's really no opportunity to do bottom up legislating as an individual, mid-level legislator. In state legislatures, it still is possible. And individual attitudes of individual legislators matter. And yes, we've had philosophical disagreements with our Democratic colleagues on this committee, and we will continue to. And I do not anticipate this bill in full passing because of those philosophical disagreements. But they have been willing to work with us where there is common ground. And that's how I got more hydro into the renewable portfolio standard 2 years ago, and I got new nuclear into the renewable portfolio standard 2 years ago. And Connecticut is now the first state in the country to have any nuclear power eligible under the renewable portfolio standard. I'm hopeful that we can find common ground on some of the things we're proposing to pass into law this session, because I do have a good working relationship with some of the Democrats on the committee. I'm hoping that we can cut some of the public benefits. Probably we're not going to be able to do. They're not going to let us do what we want on that. And I will die on the hill. I believe we need to do this, but maybe we can reform the renewable portfolio standard in some way to get more nuclear in there. Listen, natural gas is more of an executive branch function. If there's less that the legislature can do about it, but maybe we can work with the executive branch, who can maybe work with Kathy Hochul in New York now to try to take advantage of the expansion of the Iroquois pipeline, which she's mentioned. Maybe we can roll back some of the programs where the ratepayers or the taxpayers are actively subsidizing electricity demand. So I do think there's a possibility here for some of the ball to move in the right direction. But listen, supermajorities are not good for government. 2-to-1 majority is one party, and one party rule for 15 to 20 years is not good for a government. When we get together in the state legislature and do things in bipartisan fashion, I am almost always pleased with the product. Actually, I'm not always pleased with the product, but generally it's been vetted. It's been thought through, and it's pretty good, and it would be most acceptable to most of the people in the state. When things are kind of rammed down our throats, one party, without consultation, the outcomes are bad. And I imagine that if the Republican Party had a 15-year total control of the state government and the 2-to-1 supermajority in the state government, that there would be errors made. But the fact of the matter is that we need this legislature and the state government to have more balance going forward from the 2026 election going forward. That is going to be the only long-term way to reduce cost of living, improve the state economy, and including, among other things, to lower these electric bills and improve our electric grid for the future.
Well, I mean, I'm more. I might want to give you pushback on that a little bit. If you have, even if it's just a matter of party. I mean, when our first legislature ever in Congress was a one-party legislature. They were all Federalists. They weren't technically a party, but they were all Federalists. And in my opinion, that was one of the best legislative sessions we ever had. It was George Washington's first session. So I don't know. I mean, if you have everybody in the right place, you'd like to say who cares about the party. So even if it is one party rule, not by rule, but like happens to work out that way. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that we have minority representation rules in this state because it would be all one way no matter what if that wasn't the case. But yeah, so after the public hearing, what comes next? What are we doing? I want to get into the public hearing specifics in just a second here, but like, what's our goal here? What's our goal?
Subsequent to that, the leadership of this committee, the committee as a whole, will decide what legislation to pass through the committee or not pass through the committee. And so then it becomes a discussion among the legislators, taking into account the public debate, the public hearings, reading the bills, discussing them internally. They'll decide what to pass onto the House or the Senate floor and what not to. And so that becomes the next step after the public hearing. So that will happen towards the end of March.
So as far as what's happening on Thursday, I'd love to get your thoughts on what we need to do. We're not elected officials, right? Like there's a lot that we can, there are people that have told me, very often that Mike, you're wasting your breath. Where all of this gets resolved is in November, and we lost in November. And quite frankly, I don't know, for most of us who are in favor of market solutions to these problems, we lost in November. However, that doesn't mean you die. That means you deal with what is before you. And what now is before us is a series of bills before the Energy and Technologies Committee. And this is the one that I think has the momentum to actually get across the finish line if we can help you guys. So in terms of written testimony, verbal testimony, in person versus Zoom, what do you want from us?
Well, first of all, I completely gratitude that perfection is not for this world, and despair and giving up is a sin. So we always try to make things better. We can never make things perfect, and we'll never give up. So that is exactly my attitude. And to that end, what I would want from your listeners is please submit testimony, either in writing on Senate Bill 647, or sign up to testify over Zoom or in person. The public hearing is Thursday, March 6th, starting at, I believe, 10:30 a.m. There will probably be a list of hundreds of people to testify in person or over Zoom over the course of that day. I anticipate that our committee will be there till midnight or later, and rightfully so, hearing those people testify. And, there will be a list that is published the day before of the order. And, that means that you might be testifying at noon and you might be testifying at midnight or somewhere in between.
But they wait. So they do publish a list then?
An order, yes. I forget when they publish the order, but they do publish the speaking order, and that is somewhere on the Energy and Technology Committee website within the Connecticut General Assembly website. Yes. And you and I can text about once that comes out, and you can give it out, maybe post it too. But also, if you don't want to wait around or watch it or speak, you can submit written testimony, which is also very important. And even if we don't have a lot of people, I think we're going to have a lot of people speaking in favor of it on the testimony. But even if we didn't, I'll still point to that page that says, holy moly, there's 200 people who are supporting this bill in written testimony. And it could be a few sentences, or it could be, it can be a treatise on energy policy in writing. If you're testifying over Zoom or in person, the maximum is 3 minutes. But again, every voice really counts here. And I think the onslaught of popular opinion on this topic does matter. And I'll give you an example of how it matters. We've been hearing about support for our proposal to be cutting public benefits a lot for the last year. A lot from our constituents, and every legislator has been hearing from their constituents on this topic. It is the number one topic that the average legislator is hearing about. And I think there were 5 bills submitted this year, or 5 Democratic legislators that submitted bills to the Energy Committee this year to cut or eliminate public benefits. And that's how I know we're winning the public debate. And most of them are legislators who represent more working class urban communities who are feeling the costs that the state is imposing on their residents the most. have the most money. They feel it the most. It's hurting them the most. And so those are the legislators in the Democratic Party who have chosen to speak out. I think there's one from Senator Miller and Representative Butler on there. You probably have it on your list. But I remember, I think it was roughly 5 Democratic legislators submitted in some form a proposal to cut down on public benefits.
Yeah. So I was just highlighting for everybody who on my scorecard here. These are the ones I could just hurry up and get on the screen. Everything highlighted is a bill that will get rid of the public benefits charges, at least off of your electric bills. So this isn't. So I mean, I couldn't tell you who the exact sponsors are of each of these bills off the top of my head. I'm not that well versed. But yeah, I mean that tells you that like even within the legislature, this seems to be a very popular thing just on principle, the public benefits charges in general. So as far as the advice then, since we have just a few more minutes here, folks, you know, if you have some questions, comments right now, and we'll get to your comments just in a few minutes here. But you know, I've talked to some folks in the legislature, and some of the advice that I get that is, let's just do a lightning round real quick. Do you agree with some of this advice? If you're going to be providing verbal testimony, also provide written testimony.
Yes.
Should the written testimony be basically different? You want new news for the in person or
whatever you want. Whatever you want.
Okay, in person versus Zoom, which one's better?
Which depends on your tolerance for sitting around for up to 10 hours.
Okay. Is either one more or less impactful than the other?
I don't think. I think Zoom is totally acceptable.
Okay. And then because you only have 3 minutes, how do you go about lengthening that? From what I understand, there's a way you can get senators to raise or representatives to raise questions.
Yes. Listen, I don't try to belabor the point. I try to ask questions that are specific to certain people testifying to bring out a point. I think because there's going to be hundreds of people testifying either in writing or in person in favor of this. If you know, I think Mike, if you were testifying, I would ask you a question because you know I know you and I know how knowledgeable you are, and I'd like to give you an opportunity. But you know, I think for the 100th most versed person on the topic, I probably won't be drawing them out an extra 5 minutes of speaking.
Okay, so then since we only get 3 minutes to speak, okay, again, lightning round questions. Have it pre-scripted or do it off the cuff?
Whatever you're comfortable with. I think having at least an outline of what you're going to say, yes, it's great. If you're speaking fluently in an extemporaneous manner, that's best. Speak fluently, reading written remarks, that's probably second best. If you're speaking poorly in an extemporaneous manner, that's third best. So if you're going to speak off the cuff or extemporaneously, I think, you know what you're going to say and be able to say it in a cogent way. If not, read it. It's okay to read it. Absolutely.
So real quick, so everyone knows, 3 minutes is roughly 300 words. So if you're going to type it out, 300 words. 300 to 350 words, depending on how fast you speak.
And a lot of people speak, they say it, and then like you might want to submit, you know, a 5-page, 10-page testimony with charts. And if you're also speaking, you can say, please refer to my written testimony. And oftentimes I'm on a committee and, you know, someone I don't know says that, and I'll read through it, especially if I anticipate that it's going to be interesting.
All right. And then so to that 3 minute limit, what's your thoughts on speed? So you can either go slow, be articulate, and then you limit the amount of content that you can provide, or you go all Ben Shapiro speed, and therefore you can get to more things, but sometimes people have a hard time understanding you. So which one would you say is better?
Probably somewhere between the extremes.
Okay, I mean that's a bit of a non-answer.
Maybe your speed. You're not Ben Shapiro fast, but you're probably faster than average.
I mean, I can be. You probably haven't seen me speak at town council when they say, "All right, we're lowering or a town council meeting where they say, in case that we've got 55 people to get to, instead of 5 minutes, it's 3 minutes to get through it." Okay, well, on the fly, Here I go. Pay attention.
What town do you live in?
New Milford.
New Milford, yeah.
So you spoke about the Iroquois line. I mean, that's right in my backyard. In fact, it's 100 feet that way. And yeah, so
is
that's
your opinion not in my backyard or yes in my backyard?
My opinion. I don't understand. Oh, it's just a dear to me subject. Like when people say, "Oh, how we can't get natural gas in this state." Well, I mean, it's right there. And Kimberly Clark is I can see Kimberly Clark from outside my building where they have a giant gas
from my
plant.
house is a good line. But wait, no. My question is, if they expanded the capacity or the diameter on the existing pipeline that's close to you, would you be in favor of it or against it or in the middle?
Totally in favor. And I can even make an environmentalist case in favor of it too, because where it is completely out of the way. So I don't know if you've been to the Iroquois line here in New Milford, but
no,
it's completely out of the way.
And most of your kind of neighbors, people in your area, what do you think their opinion of expanding the diameter of that 6 inches would be?
Very split.
Very split.
Very split. So as a town, if I were to use the color grading, maybe pink. We're not like deep red. We're not dark blue. We're not light blue. We're not purple. We're maybe like slightly pink. That gives you a basic understanding of the generic line of politic in this town. So the feedback I have been getting about projects of that ilk, I would say it's split, which that there's a sizable portion of Team Red, let's say, that wouldn't necessarily be in favor. I think it's something that you could win people over with, but you'd have to win them over.
Yeah, it's probably a good counter argument when you say this will lower your energy bill.
Yeah, significantly. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's see if we have anything in chat. We don't have anything in chat. So Ryan, that was the hour. I really appreciate it. If there's anything else you want to add, you want to get to, especially in the lead up to this public hearing, let us know, and let folks know, best way to follow you, best way to keep in touch.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This has been really great. I'm really great. We've connected because I really appreciate the very substantive contribution you're making to the public debate here in Connecticut.
Thank you.
I'm not just saying that to be nice. It's actually a contribution. I think there is a hunger out there. I sense it because I write my own newsletters, email newsletters to my constituents. They're long and they're wonky and they're denser than most. People like them. People want substance. Voters and people, yes, their lives are busy, but they're a lot more intelligent than I think people in the media and in politics give them credit for. So I think what you're doing is actually filling a void. So I appreciate you doing it. I'm glad we got connected finally. And I'm on Twitter at Ryan Fazio. I still call it Twitter. X is just, I can't, whatever. But
I still call it Twitter.
Yeah. At Ryan Fazio, Instagram at Ryan Fazio CT. I think I'm on Facebook at Ryan Fazio. So any of those follow me on, but Twitter is kind of my stream of consciousness. I probably talk about energy policy more there. So yeah, follow me on any of those. My newsletter is you can sign up for at senatorfazio.com. But I'm generally easy to find on the internet.
Super. So, Senator, if you could just stay on with me for just a quick second, shut everything down. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Again, remember, this is your opportunity to access your senators. So do share this video. We've got more coming. I'm going to be having a lot more events throughout the course of the state. The question I'd love to have the audience answer in the comments for the folks that watch afterwards, because most of the audience is actually watching after the fact and not live. Let me know in the comments where you would love to have some sort of in-person meeting for things like letter writing campaigns, for things like potential debates, for things like town halls on this subject. Let me know where you guys are so that I can start organizing more in-person events where you guys are. So with that, I do it for you guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Good night, everybody.